Hi, my name's Lee Jasper. This is Brixton, London, and you're watching Lee Jasper Drive Time.
Good morning. Welcome to Lee Jasper Drive Time. And what is a glorious morning it is in London. I've got to get out there and catch some days. We're going to do an outside broadcast. I have to get drive time in the sunshine. That's the title of the next series. If the sun holds up, I hope you're doing well and surviving the lockdown madness. I hope that you and yours are well. These are unprecedented times, and if you've suffered or lost, then my sincere condolences to you. If you're suffering in hospital or you know somebody who is, then we're sending them all our very best for a healthy and speedy recovery. Well, as you know, Lee Jasper Drive Time is every Saturday between 10 and 12. And this week we've got a fabulous show for you. And we are delighted to be able to bring you some of the best creative talent that the Black community has to offer. I'm so gassed, as they say, to be able to host week after week discussions with some of the real people who are at the top of their professions. So good morning. I ask all a big hi to all our loyal listeners and watchers out there. I know you're with us every single week, and I'm honoured and pleasured that you consistently support this program. So thank you so much. And as you're normal, I need to ask you to share with your friends and family and your networks to let them know we're live. You know, as a radical activist, I get shadow banned. I don't know if you know what that is, but what it means is, although they let me go online and they let me live, they have algorithms that suppress my visibility because they really don't want the message to get out. So how I beat the shadow ban, I can only beat it with your assistance, and that is by you just letting everybody else know on your networks that we are live here today. So one of the unfortunate consequences of being a radical Black activist in today's environment, that we suffer such things, but we shan't let that beat us today, or indeed on any other day, because we're champions and we survive against the odds. But today we've got a fantastic program lined up for you. I'm so delighted, and we're talking about Black culture. Now, very interesting. I can see comments coming in on me, so just let me deal with that. Blessed morning to everybody out there. So happy to have you with us this morning. And I can see that you're sharing already. So that's an absolute delight. Well, and don't forget, you know, all of the previous programs are online. On the YouTube, on the Facebook. You can find them on MediaNet. You can go back, you can share them. If you're giving a talk or you want some more detailed background information about the issues, go back. They're a treasure trove of experience, of wisdom, of professionalism. So do look at the back catalogue of Lee Jasper Drive Time. This is show number 9 in a series of 10. So next week is the last week. I'm going to put it on pause just for a couple of weeks. And we're going to redesign a new intro. We're going to repackage the program. I'm going to come back stronger than ever. And let me give you a hint about what's coming in the future. We're going to do some documentaries, Roger Cook style documentaries, where I'm going to go out there in the real world and challenge all sorts of institutions and individuals about their racism. So you're going to love that program. Secondly, we'll be doing Lee Jasper's Black Question Time. Oh, what's that I hear you say? Well, can you imagine just a question time on the key issues that affect our community with people, both white and Black, who've got influence or power in relation to our communities? I'll be talking to them and exploring the key issues of the day. So 2 great things that you need to be looking out for. And of course, we'll be going back to the Drive Time specials. Those are one-off focuses, looking at people's individual experiences of suffering racism and injustice in our community, or indeed fabulous success, where show both sides of the coin. So that's what you can look forward to in the future. So let's get on with today's show. We're talking about cultural power, Black cultural power. And let's just unpack it for a moment, because Black culture has colonized the entire world. And we should be very proud of the fact, or indeed should we be very proud of the fact, that we come to dominate the world across the 4, 5, 6 continents and beyond in relation to the dominance of our culture. Black culture has become mainstream. But the question I ask is mainstreaming enough? Is there any ethical basis to this Black cultural expansion? Does it have any moral responsibility? Does it have any ethics in terms of its profession? The spread of urban Black culture across the world has culturally colonized the entire planet, from Bombay to Brixton to Brooklyn. The Black aesthetic is now synonymous with cool culture, and we are literally colonized the world. And when one thinks of the cultural influence of African music, Caribbean culture, from steel band, carnival, to the cultural superpower that is Jamaica, little island, what, 2-point-something million people, and their cultural aesthetic is all over the world, as well as the carnival favela flavor from Brazil, to the dominance of African American culture, and the explosion of Afrobeat coming out of the continent. There can be little doubt, therefore, that we do have that massive global cultural impact. In the worlds of music and film and sports culture and entertainment, spoken and written world, Black culture in the 21st century has reached a peak. And in the aftermath of the death of George Floyd and the rise of the global Black Power movement, Black Lives Matter, spoken word, art and music have fundamentally shaped the lens in which we see these global anti-racist protests. From the handwritten placards on the demonstrations to the haunting rendition of Dave speaking on his Black album, the aesthetics of the Black Power movie to Afrofuturism. You don't know what it is? Look it up. I had to. What is this global domination, and what does it mean in real terms? Do we own the industries associated with our cultural superpower dominance? Are we leveraging the multi-million-dollar global Black arts economy, as well as commentating on critical political, social, and environmental issues? And you have to ask, particularly here in the United Kingdom, what is the experience of Black creatives in the white-dominated art world? Well, arts institutions across the while arts institutions across the world have bent their knee, the question we ask is their foot still on our neck? Well, to discuss this and many, many more issues are my special guests. And let me introduce this fine selection of young talent to you. Lizzie Morley is a London-born maker and fabricator for film, TV, and fashion industries. Trained in costume, leatherworking, and product design, her skills are broad and have been applied to many popular blockbuster movies and exclusive fashion pieces. The specific fascination lies in designing and imagining Black futures. You know what? I just love Black futures. The futurism thing, that's my thing. Using new materials and techniques to tell new stories, and hopefully reimagine old stories. Design work with children in London focus on sustainability and imagination, and she hopes these projects will be up and running again and gain even more traction come September 2021. My next guest is Rihanna Norbert David. She works as a fusion. Her work is a fusion of both her trained discipline, her sense of place in the world, and goes beyond the sometimes limiting title of textile artist. She's stretching the limits of creative possibility with her artwork, and we are super delighted to have her with us today. We're also joined by Tom Pandey, who was born in 1985 in Zimbabwe, so he's a young man, and grew up on Lee-on-Sea. That's a big jump from Zimbabwe to Lee-on-Sea. We'll be interested to know the cultural shock he endured when he arrived. In 2004, he moved to London to study a BA in design at Goldsmiths College. He was awarded an RSA Design Innovation Prize at the RCA summer course project during this period. And since the late 80s, since the late 80s, has used a varied practice of art installation, interior design, concept / retail design and sculpture to explore areas of interest, fashion, art and design. As a young African artist, he's developing a sense of space to create and continue his journey working with international brands through the Pandey Studio. And finally, we are joined by Benaya Matheson, who's an artist who communicates through painted work and his own lifestyle clothing brand. His clothing has been worn by people like, and he's going to tell us all the people that has worn his clothing when I introduce him. And he works out at Huddersfield, so he's a northern lad, just like Uncle. I'm from Manchester, and you know, as
nice.
Northern Africans, I've got a whole dynamism culture all of our own, as yet unexplored. But he's currently working on a colourful mural for Kirklees Council, which highlights the importance of social distancing while celebrating all the qualities that make his hometown special. Well, what can I say? A stellar lineup for your education, and we're going to be talking some politics, culture, art, and I'm delighted to have you all. So let's begin, as time is always runs against us on this show. And I'm going to take you in the order in which I can see you, which is Izzy, Rihanna, Benaya, and then Tom. So starting with Izzy, welcome to Lee Jasper Drive Time. Tell us a little about who you are, what you do, and give us some commentary on the key themes that I've raised in the opening introduction.
Good morning, good morning. I hope everyone's well. I am, as Lee has said, Izzy. I'm based in London, and the majority of my work focuses on material exploration. I do quite a bit of design work, but most of the time my skills get employed in like movies, whether they're big Hollywood movies or small kind of more London-based productions, where people just need a different perspective, maybe some different techniques to try and realize some incredible design work. I kind of came into being a fabricator for film through needing a way to express myself, but also needing to make money, which I feel like is a key concern that we can't forget about. But the area that really, really kind of pulls my heart is working with kids to get them to realize what the scope of designing is for them, and especially kids in London, in schools like the one that I went to, where design wasn't something that was ever talked about. Design probably wasn't something that their parents had even considered as a career path or just an option in life that could be enjoyed, even if it wasn't for your job. Like going to museums wasn't really a thing that you did. Going to the theatre wasn't a thing that you did. So I do a lot of work with a company called Little Inventors that's actually based up in Houston. They do some incredible stuff. We go around primary schools. We do workshops at the Science Museum. We do workshops at private events where we kind of sit kids down, get them to think about their future, the way that the world is going to change, the impact that they want to have on the world, and how they can begin to think about creating a future and shaping it. So what we do in those workshops is encourage them to start designing things like houses for their futures, like clothing for their futures, just anything they could think of. And we find quite often that the kids that really get engaged and involved in it the most are the kids that don't have the opportunity to do that at home or at school. So it's like a whole different avenue for them. Yeah, so that's what I want to be working on more once lockdown is lifted properly and I'm allowed to go back into schools again. Yeah.
Well,
Thanks, Lee.
that's absolutely fantastic. And let's put those little adventures across the bottom of the screen. Put them in the place there for the studio.
Yeah, I'll drop them in.
Yeah, drop them in so that people can go and have a look at it. I love that using art and design in a way that can explode people's mind. Growing up, I've always found that in the right architectural or design space, your imagination becomes an unlimited superpower. But Rihanna, introduce yourselves and tell us how you're stretching your textile artwork to the very edge of the known universe.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Rihanna. I am a London-based multidisciplinary artist. I find that the title of textile artist is very narrow, as my work is it has more of a holistic nature. So my work branches out into drawing, painting, stitching, dyeing, but also into making skincare, hair care, and into movement such as my yoga practice and my kung fu practice. I really enjoy working with communities and telling their stories through my work. So that's one avenue that my work goes down. A project that I did a couple of years ago was in my local community, which is Newington Green, in between Canterbury and Dalston, if anyone knows it. And I was telling the stories of residents here, showing how gentrification has changed people's lives and what effect it has had on the local community by making textile portraits that you could view, but then also listen to the interviews that I took. So yeah, it's a mix of things that I do, but ultimately my practice is rooted in self-care, looking after the self, and in turn being able to look after others and the planet.
Love that ambition, and we're going to come back to that. But given you're a Shaolin master in the arts of Kung Fu, we want to explore that further as we go along. Great. Coming on to you, Benaya, sitting in his wonderful garden, imbuing the vibes of Mother Nature and Earth to bring us all that. Yes. How are you doing, sir?
I'm very well, thank you. Greetings, everyone. This is beautiful. It's me and Mr. Darcy, who's just decided to start moving. But yeah, I'm born and raised in Huddersfield, but after studying graphic arts in Liverpool, John Moores, I decided to come back home, and it was an accident, but I ended up setting up a clothing label and a shop under my own name and stocking my own products. And it's been a long journey for the past 10 years, exploring who I am as an artist, as a fashion designer, and as a Black creative in this town and in this country. And like Tom, born in 1985, which is a very interesting time, I find, purely for the trials and tribulations we've had to experience, but not experiencing the same way as the generations before us, and reap from the fruits of that. And through this time, exploring who I am as a Black creative, working on the clothing line and the different techniques of exploring who I am as an artist through the clothing brand, and quite like Rihanna, exploring the holistic side. So whether that's meditation, nutrition, and yoga, all the way through the brand, and expressing myself as an artist. And in more recent times, I set up a community group called the Be You Always community group, which explores how to connect the issues of mental health and mindfulness and depression with creativity and art, and always trying to continue a practice of painting and exploring myself as a creative outside of the brand, so that it can influence all my other projects and other collaborations, because I think that it's really important to keep yourself connected and centered, so that everything that you express yourself as comes out connectively and honest. So yeah.
Wow. Well, I'm loving the top, my brother. I'm loving the top already. That's got to be a unique design. Looking
thank you.
kingly in his African presence.
Thank you.
From Pandey, from Zimbabwe to Lee on Sea. That's a cultural chasm of immense proportions. Tell us about yourself, what you do, and who you are.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. I hope everyone is actually, I guess, working out everything they can and adjusting to the times. Well, I can only kind of just explain where I thought I fitted in, which was to express myself through art. Design was a kind of passion because I just used to be just so fascinated with how things are put together, and how forms and shapes and materials and I guess the kind of industrial elements to objects was kind of like put in front of me as a kid. I was always fascinated by that. So my journey, and the best way to describe what I do, has been from studying the basics and practical skills of drawing, painting, making, but I found myself to be a kind of hands-on creative. I never really found it to be a difficult thing to kind of try and understand and then quickly learn something and pick something up. I now would say that I am, under my belt, I am a designer. I can make, fabricate, and install anything that I'd exist or put my mind and create and put into any space. So which leads me to that interior design. I adore and enjoy going to spaces where it makes not just the person that's creating the space, but people using it feel a different way and leave with an element of or just feeling some expression from the intention of the space. And that led me, fortunately, to work with different things and different kind of like companies such as Seeker Cinema. I've been able to do windows at Selfridges, Liberty, Harrods. I've been able to fortunately work alongside and work with big companies such as Vitruvius and Rupert, who has a show called Salvage Hunters, and I love going to antique markets and sourcing things. With all of that journey led me to become, I guess, more confident, which is where I'm at, to have a voice as an artist, to use all the skills that I have and express them within the art gallery world, and that's kind of where the next chapter is. I will say one thing: Zimbabwe and South NLC are both, they're different, but then for me it was just kind of like my mother liked the sun and then the seaside. So I can only thank her for one, which is being able to see and a chance to go back when I was 18 to see Victoria Falls, which is probably one of the most. Africa is a beautiful place in itself, and I don't think it just gets enough highlighted in many ways. So being able to see that and really, I guess, start kind of planting the seed and reminding myself and pouring water on the fact that like I am a young black creative, not just Tom who's in Essex and not really quite fitting in or trying to figure out himself. It reinstated that, and being able to come back or being able to kind of live within the realms of working in London, working in Europe, working in hopefully working in Asia. It allows me to kind of then realize that I know where I come from, and that's fabric that I kind of wear and take into every project, and then my element of expression comes from all of those things mixed together.
Well, there you have it. A great mix of professionals and creatives are going to join me today. Well, look, guys, we opened up with the sequence that said, from a people and where we've come from, we are now the global masters of this universe in cultural terms. That wherever you go, in whichever continent you choose to plant your foot, if you see young people from behind, you won't know what color they are until you get in front, because the black vernacular, the aesthetic, the style, the walk, the chat, everything is out there in terms of global cultural domination. And one would think that that was a period of a point of celebration to say that we've arrived. How do you reconcile our real situation in terms of the socioeconomic realities that face our communities and this apparent success on screen or on the catwalk in terms of design? Who wants to dare sally forth and try to unpack some of these issues? Anybody?
I don't mind. I think that there's quite an interesting dynamic here, which is that I'm based up north and everyone else is down south. And Lee, you'll understand this more than the rest, but the up north black experience and the down south black experiences are very different.
Right.
So the pool and resources that the black community has open or to offer up north is very small. So I can't say it's non-existent, but it's very, very small. So I don't actually know where we're at as a black creative community up north. And even in saying that, kind of, it makes me realize that it's something that I need to invest in even more, even just with the workshops that I'm doing, but even more so to find out even more people actually trying to do anything, because you never hear anything of that. Whereas down south, I mean, just in this one talk, what Izzy's doing is incredible, and I don't know anyone up north who's doing anything remotely connected to that in the fashion or design world. There's some in the theatre, but I'm not really in the theatre world, so yeah, I thought I'd just open with that and let everyone else continue.
Well, as you know, we are accused as a community of being entirely London-centric, notwithstanding that, and coming from the north. I think the psychology of living in isolated black communities in the north makes you more resilient in terms of the challenges that you face. And sometimes you have to dig that much deeper in order to succeed in those sorts of environments. And of course, the north can be a cultural desert in many ways, not just for black communities, but for wider communities with all the arts resources funneling south. But on this issue of global African domination of our culture and our respective socioeconomic conditions, you know, are we owning the industry? You know, are we working for others? Are we working for ourselves? Are we able to leverage that global cultural economy to the benefit of people like yourselves or seeking to make your living and the wider community? Izzy?
Yeah, so I was thinking about, are we able to actually leverage that, and who are we working for? And I work predominantly within film and television, and what I see is, yes, you might have a couple of people, so like some of the talent in front of the lens, in front of the camera, who are black, but behind the camera, from where I'm sitting, quite often on productions, I'm the only person.
Wow.
And there's like a couple of Asians, and that's it. So what you get is brands and agencies are really happy to use black culture in mainstream advertising, in acting, but won't necessarily hire from minorities behind the lens or behind the camera. Like Prada's more than happy to use skinny white guys with their lace front weaves and stuff for their campaigns. But the reason things like that happen is that the people working behind the scenes don't have any experience because they're not hiring black.
Yeah,
That's one of the biggest problems.
I think make an important point is, Rihanna, you're nodding your head. What's your view?
Yeah, I completely agree. I think there's been a shift lately, especially because of the Black Lives Matter movement and how much it's been highlighted in media and across many different industries, their reaction to it. So there's suddenly a lot of money that is being thrown at us, which I find quite offensive, because you can't make an issue that is so deeply rooted go away by just simply throwing a large amount of money at it. So by brands and bigger companies saying that they're going to be employing more of a diverse workforce. We need to see this happen over a long term. And I've seen that because there doesn't seem to be a place for us in these predominantly white industries, we're branching off and making our own, which I completely understand there is a need for that. But I think we kind of fall into murky waters because it creates a bigger separation between us. We need to work together to move forward, to have a world that works in harmony.
Okay, using art as a unifying basis for bringing people together rather than separating apart from. What's your view?
Well, I mean, looking at things now, I think that you highlighted a couple of things. First, I want to touch on what Benaya said earlier on, which was the North and South divide.
Yeah.
Because essentially what I was going to say about that, and I want hopefully the viewers to kind of see is this, in the design, I'm talking from design, architecture kind of point of view, furniture products and that kind of thing. You had this weird battle where I feel like as though I was so blessed to have got to go to study in London. This is where things, this is the kind of like center of the, kind of the hive. And then, but then at the same time being here, weirdly enough, I could genuinely say, I still felt like, and I factually now there's a few more, but it was just me, my whole university, predominantly small part of like black people, black creatives, and that then you go to, and mind you, I was very active in going to design shows, 100% design, 10 design. I was actively being there, being seen, and kind of going to see where things are being, the kind of like showcasing of high-end design and architecture, and it was very much me. So I feel as though what you have up north, I know Benaya is very, very, very talented, has a voice, has a presence, but your loneliness is almost the same. It's not different down there than up there, down here than up there, and that's the thing that I feel like as though makes it weird, because you go, I wish I had that space, breathing space, to come to actually put the shield on and express myself as a designer and be brave and find my voice and my narrative and my aesthetic, than up there in a space like that, than down here where you spend more time just bouncing around and then it's you're kind of more haggard and more down. So I want hopefully more people to take away that your nephew, niece, sister, mother, brother is interested in architecture and design. Don't be afraid to learn what you are, but then also express yourself and really embrace who you are, and don't feel like you're alone, but obviously hopefully connect with people north, south, east and west. And also another thing about the cultural thing happening at the moment, I think there's in this world, there's one thing to kind of question, or like what culturally, what designers and architects are being given spotlight, and what I care to kind of look and focus on is what the Black African craft and skill, what skill sets are actually being put forward and shown. Why I always had to think, I was like, why is it that, when you think of a black designer, let's say right now an architect or designer, a furniture designer, project designer, I'm thinking, what's set designer? I can think of architect David Adjaye, a few others. I then stumble a little bit and I'm like, oh, and it's different here to America, but in the UK-based design and architecture scene, it shouldn't be that hard to think of a spectrum of people, spectrum of characters, a spectrum of, I guess, well-voiced, well-supported idea and people, like thinkers, basically. And that's a kind of like a shame, a massive shame. So I think that our culture is always glorified at certain points, but we never get, when that happens, it's kind of, oh, look, this guy David Adjaye designed a really nice building in Whitechapel. That's amazing. Okay, next. And it's just like, well, actually, do you know what? Why are we not, or why is there not more work or designs or aesthetics or products or um, accessories, being shown how wonderful and how skilled our people in general from our continent can create things, craft things, shape things, develop things. You know, that's where I think that, like, it's I'm hoping that both the culture but those that craft is then pushed forward.
Well, you've all struggled, no doubt, to establish your presence and your voice. What's been your experience on your journey as a creative artist? Rihanna, you spoke earlier about art, you know, having the possibility and the potential of bringing people together. Do you think that your creative talent has been recognized and accepted and embraced within the broader art world in which you operate?
So when I think about my educational background, I've been very blessed to go to some of the top art schools here in London. But these institutions, they are mainly white. And I find that Black creatives are kind of set up to fail from quite early on, because there are such high fees, first of all, which many can't afford. And then when you do go to these places, you don't really see many that look like you. The tutors and the technicians can't fully relate to the kind of work that you're creating. And you don't necessarily have the privilege or the choice to create work that isn't aligned with the way that you view and experience the world. So automatically, your work is political, and that isn't always understood by those who haven't come from a more marginalized community. So I think I am, I guess, privileged in a sense that I have got this higher education, you know, like going to the Royal College of Art and graduating with a master's there, and then being able to go into work that maybe I wouldn't have been able to if I didn't have those qualifications. But yeah, I think that it has opened up doors for me in that sense. So my art has been accepted, but I found that I've been approached you know, by galleries or institutions when they want to showcase Black only work. So it's separated into an exhibition that is just showcasing Black work. But then when it's in the broader sense, along with other people who are from my same discipline, I'm not necessarily acknowledged. And then also working within the fashion industry, I've definitely felt that I was treated differently to my white counterparts, you know, having to fight for a pay rise or speaking up about something and being completely ignored or shut down, and someone else who doesn't look like me or have the same experience as me being listened to and being treated quite differently.
So interesting story there in relation to your own personal experience. Is that top you've got on your design?
No.
I was going to compliment you.
No, this is a second-hand dress from New York, a long time ago, about 8 years ago, picked up in a charity shop.
I'm from Manchester, so we do charity shops like no other community out there. We can we proud to upgrade second-hand to brand new, so no shame in that. I love those vintage purchases in that shop. So what about everybody else's journey? There we heard Rihanna talk about, listen, she went to the best universities, she was privileged enough to get there, she got the top qualifications, and yet still she suffered the marginalization of ghettoization, if I can use that term as a shorthand, despite her having all of that qualification, all of that talent and experience. What's the experience of others? Who wants to come in?
Can I say something?
Yeah, go ahead.
The one thing I was going to say firstly is, Rihanna, like, well, your work is amazing. It's really good. And when you were there, when you're speaking, then I just wanted to, you know, did you ever have a situation where you, because you said set up to fail, because I had this underbelly kind of feeling, was like, where you kind of always sometimes question, am I good enough to be here? And that's just not what a place of learning should kind of bring up. And that's the weird thing about it, because I definitely felt it was a fantastic. You have your family, friends, everybody celebrating. You know, she's going to this university. She's going to the Royal College of Art. Great mixture of people internationally. But you then kind of, as you're working and practicing and figuring things out, you then have that feeling, which I then kind of questioned afterwards. Oh, wow, did you also have this thing where from studying you had this, what did you feel like you learned more? Did you learn more and embrace yourself outside of those courses in your own time, or within that study? And I feel like it was outside, where you kind of then went to places and carved your own path, connected your own dots, put your own shows on and things like that. I think that personally, it would be great to, on anybody's journey, you see a young black. Okay, so let me put it this way: I've got my sister has a daughter, and my brother has a son. But Amelia, I look at Amelia, she's 5, and I want the world for her. You know, I want to be able to share as much information. I really want her to be creative, but I'm sure my sister will be like, no, we're talking finances. But I want her to be, you know, to have access to, because I didn't have certain access to certain things. I've always had this kind of thing where it's like I've never been able to afford certain things, you know, I could do but so when I look at her, I'm like, I want her journey not just to be easy, that's not the point, but whichever way you feel like expressing yourself, you can express yourself. And I don't think that the current system, I don't think the spaces where we go to start, you go, kid from Zimbabwe, call South End, come to London, chucked into space, and the space is more just like, okay, this is kind of fun, but is it actually allowing him to grow, learn, and embrace himself? I'll explain why I initially had a problem when I first started at Goldsmiths, because there was so much hype that when I started this university, I was in the design course, but I still came out from doing art foundation. So art foundation, what do we get to do? Screen printing, photography, art, painting, notebook. But the courses were so split, so I kind of couldn't. I'm in the design course. Oh no, you're not in the art course. Artists get to use these departments. You can't use that. So doors were already being shut within the space that I'm supposed to be able to express myself and do things. Mm-hmm. But doing as we do, I said no. Made friends with a couple of students that were at Camberwell, and then I just made an exchange. You need it, and they were on the graphic design course. If you allow me to screen print for a couple of ideas, just to do samples, just to experiment for a project, and just be able to then propose something that isn't just what I've got here. Then I want to shoot a video. I made friends with them. You sneak me into your university, I'll make anything you need 3D in the workshop. And it's always that attitude has allowed me to kind of see a door and try and slip past it, or go through and get to the solution, or answer the problem that I've got in my head, and figure out, how do I do this, and how can I fold, how can I, dye leather, and do all of those things that I feel like we can only find out through experimentation. So I wish those spaces would kind of open up for people like us and creatives like us, and this is why I'm definitely following Little Inventors. I think it's a great thing, and I hope soon after COVID we're all able to kind of support that as well.
Okay, well, I mean, look, you're sliding in those doors. I'm a kick off the door man myself, but you know, of course, it's courses for courses, and I think like in a Black Lives Matter movement, we're actually blowing the bloody doors off. As I quote one famous line in a film. But Izzy, where you respond on your journey and your experience and that realization people are speaking about, and the tactics you've had to adopt?
I feel like my perspective was kind of the opposite to both Tom and Rihanna's. I left school when I was 15, 16, just after GCSEs, and went straight into work. So I started working for a guy who made costumes for West End shows and for ballet. And actually, that was my mum originally took me to see Alvin Ailey because her mate had got some ticket deal. So we went to see it, and me and my mum were both like astounded. Did a bit of research and found this guy who took on students, and I was a bit young, but I was like, can I come and work for you? And he was like, yeah, sure, I'll give you a go if you want. So I left school and went for work for him. and then did a BTEC course. And I got so much aggro from my teachers, from all of my family. Like, my mum didn't talk to me for a month when I left school. And I was creative, and I knew that I didn't want to do maths anymore.
Yeah.
I didn't want to do science. I didn't want to do English. My writing was terrible. I wanted to go and make stuff. And I spent 2 years of my life in London on one BTEC course. Then I left that. I did a portfolio course. I did some evening classes. I did like a distance learning film studies course. And I worked for 2 years. And after that, people convinced me that I should go to uni. So I started looking around at unis, and I remember getting told by the tutors on my portfolio course that I would not get into any Arts London universities. They told me, like, I remember being sat down by this woman and saying, "You will not get into any of these universities. You're not good enough. It won't happen." And that was ridiculous. So I ended up going to Edinburgh to an art college that was kind of bankrupt, and I ended up choosing it because the fees were a lot cheaper. And that's where I went. And I ended up just like leaving my comfortable little life in London, where I was making and working and having a nice time, and getting plonked into the middle of Edinburgh, one of the whitest of white places, at this art college that had no central heating for an entire year, thinking, how did I end up here? Like, what happened? But in a way, spending 5 years up there in Scotland made me the person that I am now. And it gave me the perspective that I needed to kind of take it back. And how can other people like me don't have the same experience? Yeah.
Wow.
Interesting, though.
What we were talking about the cultural leap from Zimbabwe to Southend, but yours was a fascinating. And what it shows is the variety of pathways into this industry that you've all taken, and they're all very varied and very different. Benaya, what's your commentary on the struggles you faced and the journey that you made living in Huddersfield? I can only imagine. How,
you know what?
I used to party in Huddersfield. I used to go to called Ben Street.
Yeah, yo, oh my days. So if you went to Venn Street,
yeah, we went there.
There's a high chance that you would have listened to my dad's sound system there.
Which is
back in the day, Armageddon sound. That's a high chance.
We played it. I used to be in a sound system from Oldham, from a little called Kittyman's.
Okay, so you know Armageddon.
Yeah, I did a with your dad a couple of years ago.
Oh my word!
I was talking about the role of Armageddon sound in the Northwest. What was your struggle?
You know what? It's an interesting one because I'm loving the fact that like all our stories are very different, but we're here, and
you made it.
Yeah.
Don't be laughing now. That's a statement of fact here.
It's true.
You have made it. So I just feel that gravitas in your soul that you have conquered beyond your, people's expectation and capacity and perception of you. And despite all the challenges, you guys have landed. I'm proud of you all. Go on, Benal.
It's an interesting one just on what you're saying there, because from everyone's stories and from myself, there's this idea of success and what that means on the outside, and then what you feel inside yourself are two completely different things.
Yeah.
And to own the idea that you are where you are because you've worked hard, and that this is a valid place to be, is still something that feels uneasy. But I'm growing more confident in owning where I am, because of how hard I've worked to get here, and the same with everyone else. I'm sure they understand what I mean. But I think that for myself, both my parents are very creative, and that's really, really helped in solidifying, I don't know, my foundations to move and be a creative all my life. So like my mum taught me how to draw, and my dad's a bespoke joiner. So my mum does interior design and soft furnishing and all of that kind of stuff. And yeah, she's literally one of the most gifted creatives I know. And they never gave me any pressure to go off into like the more academic side. Like they knew that I wanted to be creative and that I was drawing from day dot. So I think that my creative journey has been quite interesting in schools where I definitely dealt with racism. 100%. Like Mr. Armitage, horrible person.
You're naming the dude.
Oh yeah, like I went from like a small, very tiny private school to junior school to like a normal state school, which was still very small numbers. It was very nice. The kids were great, but and most of the teachers were great, but I got sat at the front of the class in the top set of maths because the school before was way better. And this teacher just decided that he took a disliking to me and used to give me homework out of everyone in the whole class. No one got homework, and I get everything right, and I didn't understand why he was saying it was wrong. He'd slam it in the bin. He'd tell me I was stupid in front of the whole class. Oh, it was just, yeah. So that was very early on, and I think it's probably solidified. It probably helped solidify that sense of worth inside myself. Like I had to really push hard to feel like what I know is right is actually right, regardless of what anyone else says. And I went to college, art college, and I had amazing teachers at art college. I went to uni, and like Rihanna, and in fact, like all of you, just really had to try and own and speak my own voice, even though it felt completely different to everyone else. And it's always felt like that whatever I was trying to say, the tone of the message felt very different, but what I was actually saying should really connect with everyone else. But why is it that I feel like I've got to translate this, even to the point where in more recent times I actually invented my own language to write, and it's not a vocal language, it's a written language. And I actually write in my own language because it's like, well, if people don't really understand what I'm saying or trying to say, then maybe I need to just create my own way of saying it. But throughout uni and then after that whole journey of just trying to, instead of asking to be in a place, it's trying to solidify interest in relationships and real relationships, which is a harder route because some people don't have the problem of trying to solidify certain types of relationships because they're just accepted from the jump. And working with those relationships, like and really trying to own who you feel you are as a creative throughout all of that. And the up north down south divide is an interesting one because I met Tom through those links that he said at uni. He was at Goldsmiths, but then the reason why I know him is because the screen printers and other people that he connected with and was collaborating with throughout his uni days were people that I went to Art Foundation with up north in Huddersfield, who I'm still friends with now, and Tom is as well. And that's how I actually got to meet Tom years and years ago. And I always had this sense of, because I got family in London, I always had this sense of like, right, okay, am I supposed to be up north? Am I supposed to be down south? And that's always been a weird question inside myself. But I explore it by spending a lot of time in London, going down all the time, spending a lot of time down there and connecting with people. And like Izzy, that's the reason why I know Izzy, because I spend a lot of time in my friend's studio in Seven Sisters. And that's how we got to meet each other, and seeing her incredible work and the incredible work that they do in that studio, because they're actually from up north. And I think that for any black creatives, I mean, just from my own experience, and I know Tom's traveled around the country and Izzy's traveled around the country as well. And I hope you have as well, Rihanna, because there is the green of up north is beautiful, and then the industrial of down south, the juxtaposition is actually a really beautiful thing because you appreciate them in very different ways because of each other. Exploring this country and the world is is a very important thing for all Black creatives, because if you stay where you are, then essentially you're staying in a place that your, I don't know, parents, grandparents brought you to and gave you this experience of, but is a tiny little speck on where your creative journey should be. And also there's this globe and the continent, you know what I mean, like Africa, where you should actually know more of. So yeah, and exploring Africa is a beautiful thing. I'm actually taking my manufacturing over there as soon as lockdown is done. So yeah.
Well, interesting input. I think Mr. Armitage was dive bombing you there after the plane that we heard in the background.
Oh, you could hear that?
Yeah.
Wow, I couldn't hear that because of my earphones. Sorry.
But interesting. So, do you guys? I mean, you know, do you guys think you've arrived in your space? Are you comfortable in your skin? Are you comfortable in your psychology? Are you comfortable in your talent? You know, we heard here about, and I had the same in school. People would tell me, you know, you'll never amount to much. You'll never do this. You'll never do that. You're not going to make it, and so on and so forth. And I know something of what that how that can influence you. And at some point, you know, even when I did arrive, you know, you have this lurking imposter syndrome at the back of your mind, not quite sure whether you should actually be there because of all the signals that are sent. And it took me some time to get over that and finally arrive. Now I don't give a shit. You know, I know who I am, and you take it or you don't. I feel that gravitas. How do you guys feel? Are you in that space?
Can I say something quickly on that?
Go in,
I think that I've said this to Tom. We've all worked very hard to not just get to where we are, but when it comes to putting pen to paper or expressing the idea and making it, bring it into fruition, we've all had a ridiculous amount of experience of translating those two worlds. And I think that the idea of success or owning where you are is a different thing to feeling like you have to work harder to justify where you are. I've said this to Tom before, like if you're going for a project, there's a sense of, okay, you need to work hard for it, but that's what you do anyway. But you don't have to work harder at it to justify being there because you've already worked hard. You just have to express yourself and do what you're supposed to do.
You do.
Yeah. Yes, exactly. Yeah. But we have this feeling inside ourselves that we have to work even harder because we was taught from day dot you have to work twice as hard or 3 times as hard as everyone else to get to where you are. And you still have to do that, but you've worked hard enough. Like the idea will come and you know you can do it. So I think that I feel like I feel more comfortable where I am than I have done for a very long time. Not say that that's a calm place, but yeah, the cycle.
Calm.
Yeah.
The creative tension to succeed. But Tom, are you comfortable in your skin that you're in and your space in your place?
I think when you say so, for me, I think I can't say yes, but I think that because the reason why I think there's a number of things that add to that. The big pillars are: am I who I want to be? And that means for me as a creative person, have I been allowed to kind of have have I been allowed to wear myself, my name, who I am, comfortably? And the answer to that is no, because I've had to fight to kind of be it's been a hard struggle to be like get into introductions, get into those circles, to be taken seriously, or to be able to and once I think that like somebody can really early on just be like comfortable with who they are and who they're allowed to be, then the freedom of expression becomes even greater. The other pillar is, I think, Benai touched on it about, working really, really hard. We endure so much. I mean, we've all been there in different points where everybody who experiences as a young Black creative, deadlines looming or project hand in, and it makes or breaks you to be like, I'm not good at writing, I'm not this, that, even writing a dissertation, for example, and you're there going, okay, 8 p.m., sorry, it's now 10 p.m., it's now 1 a.m., it's now hand-ins at 9. So you go through, everyone goes through a challenge in time when sometimes, it makes or breaks you to understand this. Am I going to be able to do this for my big exhibition that's going to come up in the future, for that, big talk that I need to do? I think it's going to be those moments, and we all have to go through hard times. No, we're not saying, oh, because I'm a Black creative, I should have it really easy and this and I should be comfortable. But if you're going to have the same battle to come out of university or come out of a degree or not have to do that study, and all you want to do is just find and create a space, which is a studio or a shop for you to kind of create, express your ideas, bring them to life, and then on top of that, be able to engage with people. Now it's obviously over the internet, to allow them to kind of like, I want a blue version of that, I want 3, I want 14, or can you come do this window for me, and engage and have the conversations from that place out to the world. And I think that, like, for me, it's you're kind of, I guess, someone's throwing a stick in your spokes at any given moment. And
do you feel confident, Tom? Are you in?
I'm so confident in myself through experience.
Yeah.
I'm confident because I'm willing to put up the fight every single time, because I have had to.
Okay. Izzy, how are you in your skin, in your space, in your place? Have you arrived?
Well, I think I have 2 different roles in a way. My role working with children, I feel perfectly comfortable doing. I love kids. Working with kids is so much better than working with adults. They have all the best ideas and they give you space and they allow you to dream as well, which is the hardest part of working with adults, is they don't want to dream themselves and they won't let you either. And I don't know why they do that. So with children, I think I'm so comfortable and so happy to be able to do the projects that I do. But then working on films and TV, I'm comfortable in my space, but other people still aren't comfortable with me being there.
Right.
And I think that's a whole another issue that needs to be addressed definitely in film and television industries behind the camera, because there still really is this sense of, I know that I should be there. I've come to terms with that. Yeah. I know that I'm good enough to be there. And thankfully, through the last kind of 5 or 6 years, I've really got comfortable with being in these predominantly white spaces, whereas at university I had a really hard time. Like, I'm so comfortable with it now because I know who I am and I love who I am. But people at work, for example, on the job I was working on before lockdown, I got asked what time the canteen was closing. Like, people think I'm a caterer. People think I work in the kitchens at my work, because this environment still isn't comfortable with having people that look like me, whether they're Black people, Asian people. I have an Asian colleague who has also been asked the same thing. People presume we're cleaners. Like, it's, in a way now, I feel like it's not my responsibility to feel comfortable being there. It's the industry's responsibility now, after Black Lives Matter, to get comfortable with the fact that we're here. Like,
for real,
if we've made it that far, we're comfortable enough to have made it that far. We've put up with enough to get there, so we're comfortable.
I'm glad to hear it. Rihanna, are you in that place?
Yeah, I find that to be a difficult question, because I definitely feel that I suffer with imposter syndrome, and I guess it stems from also me going to university and getting in because there was a grant that was being awarded to increase diversity. So then I have to ask myself, was was I actually awarded the grant just, to add more Black people into this space? Or is it because I am talented? And it's like this fight between knowing that I do have the skill, I am talented, but then also with doubting myself and questioning that. So I feel like it's a constant push and pull, but I am getting there, because I know deep down that I have a right to be here. I have worked hard, and I guess I want that to be seen first before my skin color.
Okay, well, you're varied degrees of having arrived. How do you cope, therefore, with that reaction that Izzy spoke about? That you're absolutely comfortable, you should be there, and people are saying, "Are you the security? Are you the do you know what time the canteen opens?" or and stuff like that. Do you have tactics that give you the resilience, the mental resilience, the fortitude, not to have that infect your psyche and your creative flow? What's your survival tactic in that? What can be, as somebody said earlier, hostile environments?
I think we have to ignore it. We've got so used to doing that. There's been a lot of speak around microaggressions recently, and having to break that down to understand what exactly is it, how have we experienced it in everyday life, and how are we dealing with it. And it's almost like a trauma that happens so often, and we don't have a chance to heal from it, because then it happens again, and it's a wound that hasn't had a chance to heal. So I feel like we are such resilient people, that we've been able to cope with it, but it's not something that we should have to cope with on a regular basis. So that's why self-care is really important to me in my own personal practice, because I have to be able to feel comfortable with who I am, and also have an outlet and have a space where I can come back to and feel safe, so that I can face the world. If that makes sense.
It does. So your self-care is absolutely a key condition, isn't it, in surviving in that kind of environment? And kung fu helps races in the neck if they get a bit out of sorts.
You're only meant to use kung fu if you're defending yourself, like physically, or others.
That's what it says on the tin, right? But I am absolutely sure you are abiding by the Shaolin philosophical rules and regulations. How do other people survive in that environment? Rihanna's doing yoga, she's got kung fu there, and self-care is important. What about the rest of you? I know Izzy teaches children. I can. So that's your thing. You do
no, but actually.
Go ahead.
It's okay.
Oh no, I was. Okay, just a quick point. I was going to say, the way that I survive in work, or the way that I survived when I was at art college, was with humor. Right. We had to do a project that they decided to call an Africa project. I stood up and pointed out to one of my tutors that Africa wasn't a country, or that Africa wasn't a country on its own, it was a continent. And I had to explain that in front of like 80 Scottish people. The next day I went out, I bought some kente cloth, I got my African print trousers and my Dutch wax trousers on, I wrapped my hair, I went back into college and I started singing We Are the World, and then I got kicked out of a lecture. That's how I dealt with it. I dealt with their microaggressions by creating bigger just by being a little dick, really. And they just thought it was funny, and everyone thought it was funny, and everyone was like, "Oh, I want to be your mate. She's so funny." Blah blah blah. And I do kind of the same thing at work now. When people ask me what time the canteen shuts, I go, "Babes, we're closing at 6. Come at 5. Like, why not work through? Take a late lunch." And I play up to it.
Jokes.
Because that's the only way that I have of dealing with it.
Yeah. It takes all sorts of tactics to survive in that world, and humor can be, a great way.
Yeah.
Are you, Tom?
My only savior.
Your survival tactics in your
Well, can you guys hear me? Okay.
Yeah.
I would say, to be honest with you, surviving for me comes from like a really good connection with a small circle of friends. Benaya has helped me survive, not survive, has helped me understand and shares so much knowledge about well-being and all that introspective stuff, which no one else down here. I mean, London is a place where you kind of you drop, you start running. You know what I mean? You're just go, 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 go. So that I would say that the one thing I do, I really enjoy at the moment reading. I like being on the coast. I go to a lot, cycling along the beach. I cycle in the city, and those things allow me to kind of stay a bit sane, and go through different motions. I think that's what it is. It's, when you're creative, you're emotionally connected to your work, right? Because you can say. So I think that allowing yourself to kind of release that tension at times is a good thing. That's how I do it. No kung fu. I need a teacher. I need a teacher though, so.
Oh, I'm not qualified yet. Give me a few years.
Don't hurt yourself, Tom. Don't hurt yourself.
I'm good.
Well, look,
Can I just pick up on something that Tom said?
Go ahead, Rian.
So about having a group of friends,
or
a group of people who you can turn to when you are in these spaces, I think is really important. Because even in the workplace, I had Izzy, and we could talk about these things when maybe we thought we weren't being heard. Just having that safe space to express yourself, because I think what does a lot of damage is holding all of those feelings in, feeling like no one can relate to you. So it's really important to have those connections. Yeah, even if it's just to vent, it's so important.
So much wisdom and experience in the room, even for ones so young. It's impressive, and I think that you've got to. Everybody's got to have their survival techniques. My personal dojo is the gym, so I have to throw that iron around and make lots of clanging noises and grunting noises. But I always come out feeling a lot more emotionally balanced as a consequence. So these things are incredibly important. Well, look, you all are comfortable in your space. You've all got your survival techniques to see you through and maintain your forward motion. Let's talk about the generality of it now and Black culture more globally. The massive explosion of Black culture in the 21st century. I mean, you'd have to be like me, born and had your teenage years in the 20th century to realize what a cultural desert it was for Black people and Africans. And even when we were portrayed, that portrayal was always lamentable in its characterization and portrayal. And if you did get on television or you got some space, that was, in the sort of 12 midnight TV slot for some, godforsaken arts program at the end of the day, which nobody really watched. So we've come a long way, and you see that global domination worldwide. I want to comment about two things. One is how the African aesthetic has moved from being a sort of, degraded, ignored cultural aesthetic to being, on the catwalks, on the design studios, on our movie screens, on the Oscars, throughout the world. How music itself has come to dominate the world. And I'm thinking about all of that global domination and your continual survival tactics, coping with that marginalization. How are these two things recognized, reconciled? Global success, and yet the experience that some of you all are having in relation. Aren't you supposed to be the masters of the cultural universe? Talk to Uncle now. Come on.
God, right, wow. I think I'd say one small thing about it. Yes, I love the fact that globally, I can't think. I can think of music, the arts, but black culture is like, I can't, you know, you can't compete, not compete. It's there, it's present, it's full of flavor, it exists, and it's how we celebrate our day to day. You know, I think that the only thing that I think is changed, and also I have to say about the Afrofuturism thing, from a designer's point of view, from, you know, displays, and obviously everyone's got an eye on big kind of brands and people that do interesting, weird and quirky stuff, like your Virgin Ablohs and, you know, the American, Asian cultures, and bridging those gaps. And I think it's that that bridging of, you know, I guess international spaces and people that it was before. It was just like this exists here, we exist here, we exist here. We're hearing more of the American voice because they're like a mega system in the world. But now those gaps being bridged, you know, all around the world, and I think that's kind of where I think we're at this point, and we're lucky. I'm grateful to have all of you guys as people I can say you are part of that. You're part of that thread that's kind of weaving these things together. So, Uncle, we're trying to do you proud. But how I think that what we can do now to kind of address you with that journey or that kind of existence, a bit more energy, is you respect and you understand where you come from through your heritage. Design, art and culture. I can't, you know, where I'm coming from here in England, I can't look back and go, what examples have I been shown of African designers, architects, makers, materials? You hear about them later now that I've looked in the book, but 21st century design, what designers, architects have been named that look like me, act like me, from Zimbabwe. No, you know what I mean? I hear more about Mugabe's trials and tribulations than anything else. So I'm excited to be like, now, no, you know, my family stuff. Do you know about Izzy? Do you know about Rihanna? Do you know about Benaya? Do you know about their cultures? Do you know about this? Do you know about that weaving here? Do you know about that factory? You know, they're going to be hopefully the kind of movement forward, and it's going to change from there. Then we can get to where Wakanda, and we'll, you know, I'll be there on my like flying jet.
That African synthesis then of cultures around the world.
Oh, it's amazing. So exciting.
From Brazil the other day, and people don't recognize Brazil's got one of the largest African diasporas outside the continent. So
it's the biggest, yeah.
Absolutely. And their cultural impact, I think, has yet to sort of, you know, be really recognized in the world, apart from Carnival, of course, which is already world dominating. But there is so much to that. Just about that, you know, international conversation. Is that where you're getting your energy and your synthesis? How do you find that? I saw, what was it? Somebody in America saying, you know, we don't want British black actors playing.
Samuel Jackson.
Samuel Jackson sticking his foot in it.
Well, yeah.
That was after
we should be.
It was after Get Out, wasn't it?
That's right.
Yeah, it was after Daniel Kaluuya.
Yes,
Yeah.
it was. Yeah.
really good.
And so I think, where is this? You know, is this cultural synthesis possible? I'm optimistic. I think it is, but there are still examples of sort of that kind of resistance. But for you guys, do you operate at that level? I suppose in some ways you must. But tell us more. Do you operate on that global plane?
I don't know if any of us. I think Izzy's probably the one who's explored the global plane more than all of us, just in the work in Hollywood and in theatre and in film, in the film industry. It's you've definitely explored that more than any of us. I just try to get on planes as much as possible. I love to travel and try and find an excuse to do a photo shoot or a project that connects with something that I've done wherever I've gone, India, Africa, wherever else. But I suppose that's the dream and the goal, to be able to work globally as an artist, as a creative that's initially based in the UK, and trying to find a way to feel established, not just in your local community or in your country, but globally. So trying to find that voice is something that I think we're all trying to do. But I suppose the internet and social media is our main vehicle for doing that, because the African diaspora in the UK is so small in comparison to Brazil. I think Brazil needs to own it, and that's the problem. And America is has such a big African diaspora that they have huge. Yeah, I mean, there's millions of black people there to own their communities and thrive within that. And it's weird that they see any sort of threat from British African actors, because they already own it anyway. So one or two coming over across is nothing. And we're all black, so it should just be inclusive anyway. So,
Yeah,
but it's the same in all industries, in all races as well. If you want to separate the colours as race, that I mean, you'll have loads of one amount of people, and then there's one or two who'll say something. So, I mean, yeah, it's right to call Samuel L. Jackson out for what he said, but yeah, I mean, there's always going to be one or two, and that's fine. He's still dope. He's still dope. I still support him. It's cool.
Yeah, I agree.
You're international in your travels and your experience. Tell us how that is.
I suppose just trying to see the world and how I can express myself as a creative in those countries, or bring like. Just before lockdown, I actually went to North Africa. I went to a city called Essaouira, which is on the edge of Morocco, to go and buy fabrics. And it was the timing was perfect, because like literally a month after I came back, whole world shut down. But I went there to go buy fabrics because I knew after being there before that there was amazing textiles and the culture there is beautiful. But then wanting to mix that again with my other experiences in other parts of Africa, and realizing that, there's beautiful fabrics there. There's amazing manufacturing, which has always been a real detailed issue that I really explore. Like I'm kind of obsessed with details and deconstructing and researching and exploring how to create at that top level. With my means and pushing those means all the way through, and realizing that like I can do this in Africa, and I never thought that was fully possible, because I mean it doesn't matter what you've seen in terms of your own experience. It's seeing the actual real tangible skills of what they're doing there and bringing those back to here and comparing them to what they are over here, and I'm like, wow. Not just in terms of craft and skill, but in just a normal thing, just in clothing manufacturing. There's people over there, there's industries over there that are working to the same level as Portugal, Italy, well, just Europe, India, China, which I mean you just wouldn't think of. And they do it to a really beautiful standard, and it's your own people. Oh, okay. Right. So there's actual scope to not just to do this, but then shine this light on other people in Europe, in America, that they can do this over there. So I suppose it's we have that luxury of, like in America, they always dream of going to Paris and Spain and Greece and wherever else, but it's on our doorstep. We go on Ryanair for 30 quid. So it's and same with Africa as well. Africa's so close to us and it's so far from America. So having that kind of cocktail of choice to blend those things together in our own unique way, and not just look at America as like they're the figurehead, they're the example. They can explore it in their own way, and we can explore it in ours. And the way how we explore it ourselves will show itself through our creative endeavors and ventures and collaborations.
Izzy, you're on that global playing field. Is that where you get inspiration, support? Do you see the future of being an increasingly connected African diaspora, and in relation to the dominance of the global African culture? Is there?
I see the industry that I work in changing. Maybe a little because it's being forced to now, which is a really good thing, I think. And maybe a little as well because Black Panther made so much money. They realise it's got to a point where actually if Hollywood, if British television is alienating a massive proportion of its population, it's actually preventing itself from making more money. And the one thing that producers understand is money. When you think about going back in the day, craftspeople, makers, creatives were all in the employment of the biggest employer, and that was the church. Like all the craftspeople on the planet were essentially being employed by the church of whatever religion they prescribe to create all these beautiful pieces. And now that church has been replaced with culture. So if you look at fashion and film as being our new church, if they realize that they're alienating themselves from profit by alienating potential viewers, then they're going to have to start putting more money into not just Black movies and Black TV shows and Black fashion, but actually into things that are produced by Black people as well. So I want another Black Panther, but I want it to be made by Black people too. I don't just want it to be made by people in stuffy little workshops in Los Angeles. That would be incredible. But I think it is changing. Even in the last year, I'll just say this, I've worked on, before lockdown, I was working on the new Little Mermaid. And that is Hailey Bailey, who's Afro-Canadian, I think, is our lead in that. So that's actually set in the Caribbean. And that was incredible. I went into work. They had some like Dutch wax fabric. And I was like, no, I'll bring you some of my granny's fabric. And I brought in all this Leeward Islands madras to work. And they were like, oh, see, this is the real thing. And I'm like, yes, this is why you need more people like me working here. Because you wouldn't be getting it so wrong if you had us.
Yes.
I worked on a production of Foundation, which is a classic Isaac Asimov science fiction just before Christmas. And one of the producers is Black. So he decided to push a lot of casting. So actually he's managed to secure a lot of incredible cast members who are not just Black, but female, filling these roles in this really epic science fiction that is traditionally such a white male space. So yeah, I see the industry finally recognizing that they've alienated the Black pound. Maybe it's less about being more inclusive and it's more about just increasing their potential revenue.
Tailoring their own narrative.
No matter why it's happening, it's good.
It's good. It's all good. And we're glad to hear it. Rihanna, are you on that international stage? How do you integrate in that wider global discussion and platforms? And do you see that as being future? I mean, I actually think Africa is the future for you guys, and the more connectivity that you make with Africa, both in terms of your professional and the cultural creativity that spawns out of the 50 odd countries in Africa, the stronger you will be. But what's your sense of it, Rihanna?
I completely understand why Black Panther was such a popular film, and it's because for the first time we had positive representation of Black people on the big screen instead of the usual Hollywood blockbusters which show Black suffering, with the white man dominating and oppressing, but also being the same to save us and free us. Like for the first time, but we were the ones that were in control. And even though Wakanda isn't a real place, it is based on real African experience. Like it's how many African nations would have looked if colonization didn't happen. So like if we can show more stories like this, and like Izzy said, have more of us working in these spaces, we will be able to move forward like in a more positive direction. So I haven't had the same experience as Izzy is working, on big Hollywood blockbusters. But I do think that as Black British creatives, we still do have a say, we still do have a voice, and we shouldn't be ignored just because we aren't, in places like America. Our experience is still very real, and we should express it. I definitely take inspiration from my family, moving to London in the late 1950s, and I always go back to that, especially with my granny coming from a region in St. Lucia, which is known for arts and crafts. And I feel like in history, Black people have always been quite intuitive with the way that we create and make, like it's in our genes. So I feel like it should be recognized, and it seems like it is being finally for the first time.
Well, we hope so as we move forward into the 21st century. It's been a long time coming, and let's hope that continues. So where do you see your futures then going forward? You've made it against the odds in many respects. You've arrived, you're connected, the opportunity is bright given the scenario that the industry is changing, albeit being forced to change, and by the power of economics waking up to that change, it is changing. Where do you see your personal futures in terms of your development? Are you content to plough the furrow you're in, or are you looking to, because I wake up every morning and think, how am I going to achieve world domination real quick? So tell us your ambition. That's the way I was born. He's just like too much sauce. I've got to have it all, and I've got to have it now. But where do you see it in terms of your own personal development? Where you're heading for? What's your ambition? Where do you go, Tom?
We have, like you, I think, and also it's probably a quote from what Izzy said earlier on. I used to dream before when I was younger and went to university, and I think that through my kind of journey of my well-being and just mistakeism and hurdles, that kind of, I fell on the floor. And in that time, I think that, like I have to say, my future is so much brighter because everything I've learned in the past has allowed me to dream again. And to dream big means that I share the belief that I can create, make, and design both in the US, in the EU, and in Asia, as well as, more importantly, I look forward to actually doing, products into like architecture displays in Africa. It would make me happy right now to say that I not only am able to this hopefully, make whatever UK-based, article or platform, happy by ticking a box and going, okay, this week we're looking at Black artists, BLM. Oh, okay, we've got this designer tick. But for me, I think the long, bigger picture is setting a studio, museum, platform in Africa, in Zimbabwe, in Northern Africa, middle of Africa, where young, wonderful male and female kids can just have a platform to dream bigger than I am, and then do even better than I can do. And that's where I see my future. I'm the slingshot, So we'll see what happens from there.
Okay. Rihanna, have you got global ambition, or where are you at?
Well, at the moment, I'm working on opening, I'm calling it a self-care studio, wow, which offers wellbeing services to young adults here in London, and connecting all of those aspects that I spoke about earlier, creativity linked to wellbeing, and how we need to take a more holistic approach to art, and actually the power of art and design and craft. It's been proven that it can lower cortisol levels and de-stress you, and increase, the feel-good hormones like endorphins. So we need to harness this and use it, because it's more than just, a visual stimuli. Like, it can actually heal and help people and bring people together. Like, it can decrease loneliness by bringing a group together and creating a piece of work. Is a way for people to express themselves when they are lost for words. Like, art is so powerful, and I don't think it's given enough credit, really. And there's so much that we can do. There's so many subliminal messages that feed into our subconscious daily, and it's because of art and design. Like, everything around us was created by an artist or a designer. I think it needs to be acknowledged. Yeah.
I couldn't agree with you more. I mean, art has a powerful effect on our psychology and mental wealth. I was in Gambia when Black Panther came out. I was in a rather fine hotel in the center of Gambia, and it looked like the Wakanda set to me. And more powerful images, you know, of African confidence, artistry, craftsmanship. I have to say that the elevating feeling that it gave me. And indeed, I've been in architectural spaces that have made your soul soar because of the lights, because of the space, because of the energy that it brings. So I couldn't agree with you more. I think that's, we woefully underestimate the extent with art, creativity, architecture can raise the human spirit and soothe the human soul and take us to a better place. So I will be coming to the formal opening of your resilient safe space. For sure. Izzy, where's your ambition going now? You're already taking original prints into the Hollywood studios and so on and so forth. Are you going to direct a movie? Are you going to where is it? Where's it going?
Oh, I don't think I'm going to direct a movie. It's too stressful. My ambition moving forward is to just set up some of my own projects working with kids as opposed to working for Little Inventors.
Yeah.
So I can actually just kind of decide exactly which kids I want to target myself, because obviously there's a broader remit there to just go into schools and chat to anyone. But I've done a couple of prep sessions already in some pupil referral units in South London. So they're the kids that have got kicked out of regular school, and actually it's more important to give kids like that a sense of agency and a sense of their own creativity. So yeah, just more work with kids. I feel like that's what I'm good at. So that's my role to play in this, and more power to people like Tom and Rihanna who want to like open up these spaces and set up studios and things. But I think I'm just better at talking to kids than I am at anyone else.
I see a creative school of some sort from that work, and we'd be happy to help you in that regard. Now, obviously, the Black Lives Matter movement has made such a powerful impact right across the world. In terms of your artistic lenses, how have you seen that? How have you viewed it? Have we've seen the placards, haven't we? White silences violence. We've seen the music of artists, on both sides of the talking about the issues. We've seen the posters that are going around that have provided, a visual cue to the injustice and the politics. Does art have a responsibility in relation to these matters? Is it ethically? Does it have an ethical consideration to it, other than raising the soul, which I think is a universal human ethical thing, and teaching children in the way that you spoke about, Izzy, and creating places and spaces, as both Tom and Benaya have spoken about, and making the connections. Do Black creatives have a broader ethical responsibility to the wider politics?
It's funny you say that, because I actually that was one of the main points that I wrote to myself to speak that I thought might come up in the show, and it was that it was just that what I wrote. It was just that what I wrote: pressure to feel valid as a creative in your community, given that in their eyes you chose this path, when for us it just had to be this way, and the pressure to get to a level where you feel established enough to open doors for others, because this as a concept doesn't really exist in Caucasian communities. They just do. So I don't think that we have we don't really have a choice. We kind of, if you have a voice, then you have to use it in whichever way that you express yourself, whether you're in politics, whether you're work in a normal 9 to 5, and outside of that, you're, I don't know, you do a martial art, or you're just a member of your community. You just live in just in your family, in your circle. You have to express yourself and trying to uplift those around you, and those who are younger than you, the next generations, like Izzy's doing. So I think that as regarding art in the community, and that as a responsibility, you kind of have no choice to express yourself with your art anyway, because you're influenced by what is around you, and where you stand in the world today. You're naturally going to express yourself with the tone of what is emanating from you. So as a responsibility to just be true to yourself, it's kind of a default that that's what you're going to do.
Okay, Izzy, do you bear that wider responsibility?
I completely agree with Benaya, and actually Rihanna and I have had a few conversations about just this, where we've said it's not like people have turned to me and said, why is your work always political? It's like, I don't have a choice about it being political. Like, what else do you want me to talk about? Do you want me to draw flowers? Do you want me to just go sit outside and draw flowers outside of the context of the world that I live in? That's not possible. I would have to be blind, or really have to kind of cut my legs off and cut my arms off and live in a bubble to be able to produce anything at all, to be able to leave my house in the morning and go and be a creative person and be a Black person without taking into consideration the world. So it's not a choice. Like, I can't help making political statements.
Love that, Rihanna. How do you bear that responsibility? How do you see it?
Yeah, as Izzy said, we had a conversation about this the other day, and I feel that is our responsibility if we have been given this talent, this skill, and doors have been opened for us, even if we've had to kick them down or get through them. We have to use it and express who we are and tell our story, because if we aren't being listened to in every day and people are taking more notice when it's a bit more subtle, maybe in art, then we have that power and we should use it.
Okay, Tom, are you ethically burdened in this regard, or liberated?
I think that, okay, so for me, I've been to, there's a bit of a juxtaposition, because I went to the protests, and all of them, because that was the only way I could express or let out the sadness, pain, and grief that was collectively kind of like, building up inside of me. It's one thing to look at the protest being like creatively what is being said. I mean, to see people stylish, it's like you see Afropunk, I still want to go to. I went to one in London. It's amazing. There's beautiful, stylish, expressive characters, and so. But the thing is, in my world, what the protests did, and allowed a lot of people to come together and breathe and be a voice. The media reflected it as a completely different thing, and then so in our industry, the connection there is then going, okay, well, I go to help out in a workshop that our studios work with, and the comments are like, oh, you see, go to that protest. It's like, not, hey, how can I help you? What ideas do you have? Can I open some doors for you to X, Y, Z? And that's again another kind of thing we have to do, is kind of go, do you know what? I know that this is a beautiful thing. I know that I am talented, and as you said, as Izzy said, and yes, it's like, we can only express what comes naturally to us. We are aware, our eyes are open. This is what we're going to express, and I look forward to that being, that's what it's kind of like, shine a light on, and look forward to things like that happening more and more and more. So again, I cannot say that we are. I'm not going to shy away from looking forward to seeing all of our work recognized internationally. all of our work being spoken about in all mediums, all of the sounds that kind of heal us and bring us together, being able to be resonated around the world freely, and look forward to things like that happening more and more.
Good.
And people spending money on our products and supporting our kind of financial status, because it's a hard struggle,
Do you guys benefit from the £5 day that we had the other day? Was it?
Nope.
No,
not at all.
You didn't feel the effect?
Zero.
Okay, all right, that's interesting. Just
I found it very interesting.
Absolutely. Well, we've got more work to do, that's clear. But just in the Black Lives Matter movement, except for the traumatic 8 minutes 46 seconds, which all left us shocked to our core, what are the moments that have struck you, either in terms of what you've seen in terms of creative design or input in relation to Black Lives Matter, or just images that you've seen apart from the trauma of seeing our brother lose his life in 8 minutes 46 seconds? Has anything you've seen struck you? Tom, you were on all the protests. Were there moments there that have stuck with you?
So I think that there is a lot of people together at the protest. A lot of people at the protest basically had had one big voice, but as a movement, that what I'm trying to say is like the masses of people together was like beautiful. Like it was amazing. It's still now. I think being able to come to London and be part of to see a Hyde Park, just everybody and people trying to kindly share information, let people speak, look after each other, given a mask, given water, just that love, but on a huge scale, is what I want to highlight more than anything else. 8:46 it was a cut, it was a deep stab, and I think the knife was pulled out. We can only look left and right from each other and see similar faces going, it's okay, I got you, let's just grieve together. And that in itself is kind of like beautiful. So,
wow, that's powerful.
That sticks in my mind a lot.
Powerful memories. Anybody else had those sorts of wow moments in watching the Black Lives Matter unfold?
I went to the Manchester march.
Yeah.
And it was an interesting one because there was like zero police presence, and it was extremely calm, which in general has been the narrative all over the world. Like in general, I mean, like unless Antifa's involved, or do you know what I mean? Like, and it was incredible. There was parts of it like Tom said, where that community spirit, that shared oneness, which I think people look back on. There's an interesting book by a guy called Sebastian Junger called Tribe, and he speaks of these times where the world goes through a significant shift, and it's gone through a significant shift for a negative reason, and people look back on that as in terms of like the way the community came together to deal with the trauma of that situation, because in general the governments never really come together to actually deal with it in the way that they're supposed to be responsible for. And throughout the whole protest there was this community spirit, but then I just had to really look at I had this feeling of like, it felt like I was in a pantomime, like I was in there was like a theater to it, and that there wasn't any real change going on, because no one's picking up a book. And I wanted to take that time to really observe who was around me and who I was with and what I could see, and take note for appreciating the mass of people coming together, not just in Manchester, but all over the UK, all over the world. And and hope that there was a significant change. But I don't feel like we have the gift of hindsight yet to know how significant a change there's been. If there's a small change, which is, I mean, I'll take a small change, but really, it's that gift of hindsight where I want to see where there was like school reform, or I mean, for the education system to teach Black or world history as a holistic whole. But a few statues and stuff, they needed to come down anyway. So yeah, that's kind of where I stand on that.
Rihanna, any moments that have struck you when you watched the Black Lives Matter movement?
Yeah, it's been a very interesting time. What Benaya said actually really struck me, because you've been able to kind of differentiate who has been performative during this time and who's been genuine. And also it's opened up more conversations that maybe people haven't had before. It's just such a complex issue that obviously won't be fixed or changed overnight. But my feelings really fluctuate with it. It's hard to express. But I feel like some days I do feel really hopeful because it seems like there is a change. But on the other hand, I feel like not enough time has passed for us to really, see this change happen. Something that also struck me was the way that artists are expressing what's happening at the moment. I saw an image, I can't remember what the artist's name is, but it's a little white girl standing in a toy shop, and all of the dolls that are on display are Black. And it's such a striking image to me because it's abnormal to see it when it's flipped the other way. But that is how our life has been, like being a Black person growing up in the UK and not feeling represented. And even the smallest things like toys, and just thinking that's normal until it's changed, and then you see it for what it actually is.
Absolutely powerful insights there. Izzy, what struck you as this global movement and moment has unfolded?
Similarly to Tom, I've been to, a lot of the London protests. And that, I think, just the images of people flooding out from train stations or like marching down to Trafalgar Square, and actually they being people that I could relate to, being people that look like me, is incredible. So I started off going to protests with the Iraq War protest, and the last one I went to last year would have been the Brexit protest. They're just so white. They look like Waitrose, you know? And this one didn't look like Waitrose. And that for me was incredible. Was everyone, I was chatting to some boys on the train on the way up. They were from like Dartford, and they were 13, 14 years old, and they just like ran out the house, grabbed a mask and got on the train and gone. And there were Black kids and white kids, and they were all there together. And it's like, this is the energy that we need. And this is incredible. But then you go home the same evening, you turn on the TV and you see Keir Starmer kneeling in front of his desk, calling Black Lives Matter a moment and not a movement. And you think, wow, look at the contrast between these kids. They're 13. Technically, they don't have an education yet, and they already understand what it's about. And you, Keir Starmer, like
Big man,
former chief litigator, big man, you stood there kneeling in front of your desk, paying lip service to a movement that you think is a moment. So yeah, the juxtaposition of those two images really struck me, because that was the same day.
Performative is the operative word in the conversation, and let's hope it is a movement and not a moment, and that it does lead to the kind of substantial change. Well, look, it's 5 to 12. Would you believe it? The time warp that is Lee Jasper Drive Time has crunched 2 hours into what appears like minutes, and largely because of your dynamic and excellent contributions. Can I thank Izzy Morley, Rihanna, Benaya, Tom Pandey for your presence here this morning. You know what? I'm deeply impressed because you show a degree of insight and wisdom that was way beyond my capacity at your age. So I am humbled to have you on my show. I wish you all the best for the future. I expect to see your names in galleries, in lights, in textiles, and in self-help awareness shops and designer labels throughout the future. But thank you very much for joining us on Lee Jasper Tribe Time. I hope you agree that what you've seen today is the young, the gifted, and the black. And we say goodbye to our panel as we bring the boat into the harbour for the 9th edition of Lee Jasper Drive Time. And there you have it. Black creatives who are doing amazing work. I mean, working in all sorts of arenas and difficulties. What struck me was the philosophical, the considered, the experiential reflection that all of them have in relation to their personal journeys and the wider challenges that face the world. And the challenges are enormous. And we hope, as they did, that the Black Lives Matter movement transforms, not merely reforms, and that what we see coming from the arts and the culture sector and the private sector and indeed the civic and public sector is not just a sort of accommodating movement to quell the fire and the energy of the passion, but is a fundamental cultural change that can lead to profound outcome. And let me say this about the power of culture. And the power of culture is enormous. I already spoke about it, and Rihanna spoke about the extent to which architecture and culture and design and environment can inspire, can change, and it really can and does have that power. And what we know is that we can introduce all the politics and the policy you like, but if the culture of a nation, a community, a people is antagonistic to the politics or the policy, then the policy is usually defeated. Culture, my friends, can eat policy and politics for breakfast. So once again, we leave you with those profound words. Next week is number 10 in the series, and we'll press pause for a couple of weeks so we reconsolidate and bring ourselves back together again. We'll be back next Saturday, 10 till 12. Make sure you join us as we do a wipe up, a roundup, a reflection on all of the programs and all the contributions that you've made. I hope you will share the program. Don't forget, it will be online and you can share it with us to make sure that if you didn't see it live, you can see it again. My name's Lee Jasper. Thank you very much for sticking with this program today. I'm sure you're going to dip back into it and find countless jewels of wisdom that for your consideration. So take care. Have a great weekend in the sun, and we'll see you again soon. Thank you very much.
Hi, my name's Lee Jasper. This is Brixton, London, and you're watching Lee Jasper Drive Time.